Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever found yourself reading the Bible and suddenly wondering, wait, can I still eat bacon? What about getting a tattoo? Or, dare I say, playing a round of golf on a Sunday afternoon? Well, if you've ever felt that tension between the ancient laws of the Old Testament and our modern lives today, you are absolutely not alone. Today, we're exploring a fascinating lecture by Dr. Tiberius Rata on God as lawgiver, to unpack exactly how these ancient texts function, and more importantly, to answer the burning question, which of these biblical laws actually still apply to us right now? Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our agenda for today. 1. The purpose of the law. 2. Two types of biblical law. 3. Grace, covenant, and rules. 4. Jesus raised the bar. And 5. Does the law apply today?
Section 1. The purpose of the law. Why was it given?
You know, when we hear the word law, our modern brains immediately jump to cold, strict legal codes, speed limits, and courtrooms, right? But the Hebrew word used in the Bible is Torah. And while it's frequently translated as law, a much more accurate translation is actually instruction or teaching. The Torah wasn't just this heavy burden of do's and don'ts meant to crush the Israelites. Far from it. It was highly revelatory. When you read books like Leviticus, you aren't just reading a sterile rulebook. You're reading a revelation of God's holy character. It was literally an instruction manual for human conduct showing the Israelites exactly who their God was.
Over in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul gives us a really brilliant way to understand the law's ultimate purpose. In Galatians 3, he uses the Greek term pedagogos, which translates to a guardian, a tutor, or a teacher. In the ancient world, a pedagogos was someone put in charge of a child to guide them, discipline them, and essentially keep them safe until they reached maturity. Paul says the law was our pedagogos. It was specifically designed to be a temporary guardian meant to guide Israel straight to the Messiah.
Moving to Section 2. Two types of biblical law, apodictic and casuistic.
So scholars generally divide Old Testament law into two distinct literary categories, apodictic law and casuistic law. Apodictic laws, those are your big, broad, general commands. Think of the 10 Commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. They are direct principles that usually begin with you shall or you shall not, and they honestly don't give a lot of conditional qualifications. On the flip side, we have casuistic law. These are case laws based on highly specific if-then scenarios. For example, if your ox gores someone, then you must do X. These were incredibly specific to the ancient agricultural society of Israel. They basically provided hypothetical case studies to help local judges apply the broader principles of the apodictic laws to everyday neighborhood disputes.
Section 3. Grace, covenant, and rules. Relationship over rules.
Okay, there is a persistent myth out there that people in the Old Testament had to earn their salvation by perfectly keeping all these strict laws. But that is completely backwards. Nobody in the Old Testament was saved by keeping the law apart from faith. Just look at the timeline. God famously rescued the Israelites from slavery in Egypt first. He saved them completely by His grace. It was only after they were saved, safely hanging out at Mount Sinai, that He gave them the law. Obedience wasn't the precondition to salvation. It was the grateful response to already having been saved. They didn't keep the rules to become God's people. They kept them because they already were God's people.
Dr. Rata actually hits the nail on the head here, using a very relatable marriage analogy. He says, you can't say to your wife, we love each other, there are no rules. Yeah, there are rules, and you had better learn them early. I mean, it's so true. Any intimate covenant relationship requires boundaries and expectations. You can't just claim to love your spouse and then completely ignore what they care about. The Old Testament law should really be viewed as an expression of a loving covenant. In fact, if we stop viewing it as a list of restrictions and start reading it as a love letter from a holy God, our entire perspective changes.
Section 4. Jesus raised the bar. The Sermon on the Mount. Now, what's really interesting here is that a lot of people just assume Jesus came to lower the ethical bar. They think, the Old Testament was incredibly strict, and Jesus brought grace, so He just wiped the slate clean. But in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus actually does the exact opposite. He raises the bar. He says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery. Jesus makes it crystal clear that the letter of the law, just avoiding the physical act, was merely the bare minimum requirement. Jesus demands that we follow the spirit of the law, which goes much, much deeper and targets the heart and our inward motivations.
When we miss that spirit of the law and fixate purely on the letter, we fall straight into a trap called legalism. Dr. Rata shares a fascinating and honestly kind of funny personal anecdote about this. He grew up in a very legalistic church where they still enforced random parts of the Old Testament law. They outright banned playing soccer or Sunday golf, which caused him to miss quite a few rounds. Even stranger, if a woman gave birth, their church forced her to stay isolated at home for 4 to 6 weeks, pulling a specific ceremonial law straight out of Leviticus. This perfectly highlights the danger of cherry-picking ancient rules today. When we impose old ceremonial laws without understanding the new covenant, we end up missing the freedom of the gospel entirely.
Section 5. Does the law apply today? Navigating the old law.
So, how do Christians actually navigate this today? Theologians generally fall into 5 frameworks. The theonomic approach believes modern governments should just adopt Old Testament laws outright. The Reformed approach emphasizes a strong continuity between the law and the gospel. Then there's the modified Lutheran view, which argues we only follow moral laws that are explicitly repeated in the New Testament. The dispensational approach emphasizes a complete break, viewing the law purely as a temporary tutor that's now gone. And finally, the moderating approach finds a middle ground, primarily by dividing the law into 3 distinct categories.
But wait, before we land on a practical solution, we've got to bust one more myth. Walter Kaiser points out a brilliant fact. The 10 Commandments were not late-breaking news. When Moses came down Mount Sinai and said, "You shall not murder," and "You shall not steal," the Israelites didn't gasp and say, "Wow, no way, we had no idea we weren't supposed to do that." No, if you read the book of Genesis, you'll see pre-Mosaic evidence for these exact moral laws. Adultery, murder, theft, they were all recognized as sins long before the law was formally written on stone tablets, simply because they reflect the eternal character of God.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we can actually apply these ancient texts today using what Kaiser calls the ladder of abstraction. It's like a giant puzzle. Let's take an obscure law from Deuteronomy. Do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain. Step 1 is understanding the ancient situation. You need to feed the working animal. Step 2 is climbing the ladder to find the timeless general principle. Those who work deserve to be supported by their work. Step 3 is climbing back down to our current situation. And this is exactly why the Apostle Paul quotes this specific ox law in the New Testament to argue that churches should financially pay their ministers. The cultural situation totally changed, but the moral principle remained exactly the same.
So, to finally resolve our bacon and tattoo dilemma, the moderating approach offers a highly practical 3-fold division of the law. First, the civil law, which governed Israel as an ancient theocratic nation that no longer applies to us today. Second, the ceremonial law, the sacrifices, the dietary restrictions like bacon, the purity rituals, these were all perfectly fulfilled once and for all by Christ's sacrifice. We are no longer bound by them. But third, the moral law, the 10 Commandments, the ethics of human dignity. This is absolutely still binding today because God's moral nature does not change. So, eating bacon? You're good. But loving your neighbor? That is still an absolute requirement for sure.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to really chew on. We've seen that while the ancient civic and ceremonial laws have been fulfilled, the moral law remains this powerful window into who God actually is. If the moral law truly reveals God's unchanging character, how does viewing it as a love letter rather than a restrictive rule book change the way you live your life today? How does it change the way you love your neighbor and the way you love God? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep asking great questions, and I'll see you on the next explainer.